it's amazing to see the ongoing restoration and the fulfillment of all these prophecies in here. But as we're building these hundreds of temples, we are establishing Zion all around the world. It's really amazing.
Welcome everybody to this week's podcast, and I'm excited to have a regular on the podcast. He's actually one of the main people here, and that's Jonathan Neville. So Jonathan, you're here.
Happy to be here. Happy to be here.
He just took off his missionary badge because he's been tell us what you were doing there.
Yeah, I've been on Zoom all day meeting our new students because we're pathway missionaries. I took off my missionary badge, but here it is.
Yeah.
So I've got one of these for when we were missionaries in the Spanish branch, and we're just accumulating them, I guess. But we love Pathway. We think it's a phenomenal program, and we encourage everybody we can to get involved with it if they haven't, either as missionaries, if you've been through college, or if you haven't been through college, to just join in and start learning.
Where are they mostly from?
Our students are from all over. I mean, when we signed up, we could select a region. We could have selected the Middle East or Europe or Africa or wherever. And we just wanted to do it right here in the Oregon area where we are.
Yeah.
So some of our students are from Oregon, but we have students from Alaska, California, Washington, Florida. I can't remember where all they're from, but they're from all over.
Wow.
So it's exciting.
All right. Well, that's
why I'm wearing a white shirt, by the way. I don't want you to get used to this. Because I'm in my art studio, and normally I'd be wearing my painting clothes, but for today, this one exception just for you, Rod, I'm wearing a shirt and tie.
All right. Well, that's pretty good. Well, this is lesson number 36, and we're going to be talking today about sections 94 through 97. And again, just want to reiterate that I want to make sure everybody study your manuals and go to your gospel doctrine classes. These are for supplemental purposes and not to replace. So we're going to talk about just a few different sections. So Jonathan, so let's jump right into section 94.
Okay.
So we know that this was happening in Kirtland, and this is in the spring of 1833.
I'll share my screen. We'll just pull up the slide for just a minute.
Yeah, let's do that.
Because I have a little bit of it's not all PowerPoint the whole time, but I do have one here to kind of introduce it. Can you see that all right?
Yeah, that looks good.
Okay. So this is the cover page for it. The Doctrine and Covenants. Actually, we wouldn't be, let's see. Well, this is the page from the manual that shows the artwork from Kirtland, right?
Yeah.
And it highlighted this passage I thought was real interesting, where it says, as the land of Zion was now the most important temporal object in view, I inquired of the Lord for further information upon the gathering of the saints and the purchase of land and other matters. So that's kind of the gist of these whole sections is the land of Zion and building a temple and gathering, which has been the kind of the theme of several of these sections of the Doctrine and Covenants.
Yeah.
I thought that's particularly interesting. And then I also put this slide up to give just a reminder of where these things are taking place, because D&C 94 through 96, well, all of them were given in Kirtland, but the first three, 94 through 96, pertain to Kirtland. Section 97 pertains to the people out in Missouri.
Yeah, or what they were calling kind of Zion at the time, but actually, interesting. In verse 1 of section 94, it says, "Again, verily I say unto you, my friends." By the way, I just love that. Where here's Christ basically saying, calling them my friends in these revelations. It says, a commandment given to you should commence a work of laying out and preparing a beginning and foundation of the city of the stake of Zion. So there's apparently a stake of Zion. This is just a city in it, here in the land of Kirtland, beginning at my house, which of course he's talking about the temple here. And
let me show one more. This other slide kind of orients these four revelations a little bit.
Okay.
Because 94 was actually given the same day as 97. But it's out of order chronologically. If you look at the headings, these are the headings from the sections of the Doctrine and Covenants.
Mm-hmm.
And so 94, originally there was a historical error on the date of it. that lasted for a long time. And in the Joe Smith papers, you can read about how they discovered the error and they corrected it, but they didn't replace the order. They kept the same order that it had been in all along. So it's, even though it sounds like it's before 95 and 96, it actually was a couple months later.
Yeah. In August instead of in May.
Yeah, that's just something to keep in mind. And then because it talks about appointing a church building committee, and that was after section 95 and 96. So it's a little confusing if you just read them chronologically the way they are listed as sections. It's better to read 95, 96, and then 94, and then 97. It sounds confusing, but that's the reason. Yeah, that's the reason they're talking about a building committee when they really haven't set that up yet. So
okay, yeah, that makes sense now.
Okay, so I'll stop sharing for now. We'll come back to it because the next slide is when we get into talking a little bit about actually building the temple and what that's all about.
Okay, well, basically, I was just going to talk about, it talks about several different buildings actually that the Lord is saying to be built. In verse 4, he talks about a house of the presidency, and that's in verse 3, and he says it's going to be 55 by 65 feet in the width thereof and in the length thereof in the inner court. So that's not necessarily the length and the width of the building itself. It's the interior portion of it that they're going to be using apparently.
Right.
And then they also talked about the presidency there. And there's also a printing facility that was being talked about here, and that's also 55 feet by 65 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the temple itself too, and that's also that. But I was gonna show you though. Let me see if I can bring this up really quickly here. Let me see here. Photos right there. So hopefully we can see this. Oh, I need to share a screen though. Excuse me. Okay, so that would be this one. Okay. So this screen is showing the Kirtland Temple. This is the main floor plan here, and you can see it's 55 feet and the width thereof, but 79 feet and 2 inches in the length thereof if you include the vestibule. But if you deduct the vestibule, the inner court basically is actually, just like they said, 55 feet by 65 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And then if we go to the next, let's see if it goes to the next one here. This is the apostolic floor plan. This is the upper one, the upper area of the temple. So this is the one above there. So that's there's a light well, and then you can see that you have the two sets of pulpits facing each other on either side, on the north and on the south there.
Right.
Okay, and then here is the other 2 floors of the temple, the basement floor plan, which essentially just had some footings essentially down underneath there, and there's really not much there, just a dirt floor and so forth. But then at the top of it was the School of the Prophets for a while, and Joseph Smith's offices were up there for a while. That was way up in the top. The construction of the temple was actually quite unique as well. But I wanted to point out, this is the temple itself here. Just a couple of views. This is a section drawing here on the right hand side, and then a section drawing through the the center of the building here. So you can see the stairways going up, kind of circular stairs that go up, and then to each level. There's the basement level, which they don't. When you go on the tours there, they don't take you in the basement level because it's basically just dirt and cobwebs and the pillars.
Right.
And then you have the 2 other main floors, and depending on the size of the group that you have, if you go back to Kirtland, the temple is actually owned again, as you probably know, by the Community of Christ, which was formerly the Reorganized Church of Jesus Christ. And so if you have too big of a group, they won't let you up in the top of it because it's a little bit it wasn't built for very many people.
Right, that's right. Yeah.
So it's so the floors are a little weak, and you get too many people in there, it could cause some issues to go on there. But there was a lot of schooling and so forth that the prophet did up there, and he did a lot of his studies and so forth, even Hebrew studies and things and that like that, up there with some of the brethren there. But I just wanted to share that little bit of information there on the Kirtland Temple.
Cool.
This one.
But there's a real important thing that the lesson manual brought out of section 95.
Yeah.
So I'll put that up here. We can kind of read through it and discuss it, because it's kind of the key point of this whole lesson, I think, is what they had in mind here. And it makes sense, because the whole lesson is really talking about the temple. Can you see that okay?
Yep. There we go.
They point out that when the Lord commanded Moses to build a temple, he said to make all things according to the pattern shown to him. So in other words, the Lord had revealed the temple to Moses and the tabernacle, and it was to be in the center of the camp. And then, as it points out here, God commanded Solomon and his people to build the temple according to the pattern that he showed them. So as in the yellow part here, it says, the Lord restored the fullness of the gospel. He commanded Joseph Smith to build temples according to a revealed pattern yet again. So this is a long established pattern that the Lord has of telling his people how to build the temple. Then it quotes here from section 95, let it be after the manner which I shall show. And like a tabernacle in the wilderness, it was meant to be a central feature in Kirtland. So I pulled up here one of the, as an example, the Salt Lake Temple. We'll come back to this section in a sec, but building a temple is like building ourselves, right? Sometimes we have to tear ourselves down in order, in certain ways, or be chastised in order to build a better temple, a better us. And we're all under construction. This is a great photo of the site in Salt Lake City, which those who may not have been to Salt Lake recently may not have seen how the temples, not the temple itself, but the annex and the area around it has all been torn apart like this. So I thought it'd be interesting to look at how the original foundation was built for the temple. Here's a picture of it from the 1800s. And then when they was still under construction, everybody gathered around for these events that they had there. This is what it looks like today. I was in Salt Lake about a month ago, and from the Joseph Smith building, you can look down and see how much they've torn away from the visitor centers,
yeah.
the annex. They've just taken everything down to the ground. This is actually, when I was there before, it was dug a little deeper than this, but they've been working on the foundation of the temple to correct it. And here's a picture of what the plans look like. It'll look like when they're finished. So it's a much more beautiful, appealing, and solid foundation for Temple Square than it was before.
Well, it's just kind of like you were saying about us personally, the reason why they had to do this is because that, many of these buildings were not built to earthquake codes and so forth that we have now. Although they would have probably let them stand, we don't want the temples to be, coming down an earthquake. So they actually had to go in and secure the interior, the internal portions of it. And kind of the same way when we get torn down, sometimes we have to go in and shore up our internal testimonies and our internal understandings of things.
Yeah, and that's what this verse from section 95 said. The Lord said, "Verily, thus saith the Lord unto you, whom I love."
Yeah, which is again different than. Yeah, that's a little bit different than the previous one. He said, "To you, my friends," and then this one he says, "To you, whom I love."
That's right.
That's pretty cool.
But he says, "You who I love, whom I also chasten, that their sins may be forgiven. For with the chastisement I prepare a way for their deliverance in all things out of temptation. And I have loved you." It's the reason that he does chasten us is to deliver us out of temptation, because he loves us. Yeah. Then he goes on to say, "Wherefore you must needs be chastened and stand rebuked before my face, for ye have sinned against me a very grievous sin. And ye have not considered the great commandment in all things that I have given unto you concerning the building of mine house." So the grievous sin, and that's an interesting term we could talk about, but the very grievous sin was not building the temple as they've been commanded to do.
Yeah. And
then a few verses later, he said, "Yea, verily, I gave unto you a commandment, you should build a house." And it's very clear, "in which I designed to endow those whom I've chosen with power from on high." And then he said in verse 10, nevertheless, my servants sinned a very grievous sin, and contentions arose in the school of the prophets, which was very grievous unto me. And then he reiterates in verse 11, verily I say unto you, it is my will that you should build a house. And if you keep my commandments, you shall have the power to build it. There's so many lessons packed in here, but when the Lord commands us to do something, he really wants us to do it. And he points out, if you keep my commandments, you'll have the power to do it.
Well, and one of the things I'd like to consider is the fact that this temple, even by today's standards, is a pretty amazing edifice.
Absolutely.
But back in that time, when you consider these people had no power tools, no hydraulic things, they had no cranes, they had no earth moving equipment, or any of that kind of stuff. It really is, it would seem pretty undaunted. I mean, and pretty daunting to try to even attempt a building of this magnitude. And we know where the original plan came from. The original plan actually came from revelation from the Lord to Joseph Smith. He was shown the temple in vision. And so he knew exactly what the temple was supposed to look like. And I'm sure when he first kind of laid it out for the brethren, going, wow, that's huge.
Well, in fact, it's just, since you bring that up, I put up here the diagram for the plat for the city of Zion.
That
they designed about this time. You can see right here in the middle is where the temple was supposed to be in the middle there.
Yeah. And it's a beautiful area back there. But these are mostly farmers,
Yeah.
And then when it talked about it's going to be constructed in a manner that's not known unto men. Actually, it's really interesting because there was a shipbuilder that just happened to be in the area. Joseph Smith sent for him to go and to go get this guy. Said that no one knows really how we're going to build this building. And then this guy came out. He had been a shipbuilder, and he said, yeah, we can do this. And he kind of designed it like he said, it's kind of like an upside down ship hull kind of thing.
Right.
Anyway, so he had to try to figure out how to do that. And then the other thing is that the style of construction, they call it rebel stone construction, which is essentially they just took stones that they would quarry out of the quarry, which was about 3 or 4 miles away, I guess. And they would quarry these stones out of this quarry. And I've got some pictures of that I'll throw in as well here. But they had these stones. They would basically just stack the stones up with just mortar in between. So there's no steel, no wood, on the holding up these, the walls go from about 4 feet thick at the bottom all the way up to about 2 feet thick at the top. And this, if there's an earthquake, it's not going to be good. So I'm hoping that we can get the opportunity to purchase the temple from the community of Christ and see if we can do some of the same things they're doing to the Salt Lake Temple and do it on the Kirtland Temple to preserve it. If there was an earthquake, it would be devastating to the temple, probably.
Well, yeah, I have it. Let me put up this historic picture of Kirtland that shows the temple there, how it was up on the hill.
Yeah.
And, those who have visited there know this swampy area now is kind of where the restored New OK Whitney store and all that stuff is. But it was such a prominent site.
Oh, yeah.
And so, incredible compared to all the other structures that were being built. As you said, it was unusual. It had a design that no one had ever tried before, with all the curtains and all those pulleys and all the stuff there in it as well. So it was really quite remarkable.
It really is. And I guess that's probably the reason why when they first were shown this, they probably went, oh, wow, I know. How do you plan to do this, Joseph?
Yeah. Most of them are probably thinking, how about if we don't build it? And that's why the Lord chastened them, because, to them, it looked impossible. I kind of think about that as in terms of today too, how we're all trying to establish Zion, and we have this ideal for a Zion society that we're all involved with.
Yeah.
And we don't, a lot of times we don't realize what that would be like, what it would even be.
Yeah. Can we even?
And so I think this is a really good lesson for us to see how we can be doing our part to establish Zion, just like you said, the different experts and the regular members of the church built that temple in Kirtland.
I think also what you said at the beginning, when it comes down to our own personal edifice, you know, and that kind of thing, basically, no matter how bad you've blown things or messed up your life or made bad decisions or whatever, it may seem insurmountable, just like this temple seemed insurmountable as well. But but if you just stick, you know, just have faith in God, it'll work out. And it's
yeah, you know, my wife and I also teach the emotion, well, not teach, we moderate or facilitate the emotional resilience class, which we did one last night. And it's awesome because it's the same idea. We talk about how the challenges that we overcome in our life are part of the Lord building us and building us into a greater edifice. There's even a video in there where it shows a house having to go under all these adjustments in order to build a palace. And that's how each of us is.
Yeah.
By the way, I was going to say, if those who are interested in learning more about how the Kirtland Temple was designed and everything, there's a great website. Should I just pull it up here and show everybody?
Sure.
Okay, so it's let me share my screen again here, because I think it's worth looking at. It's called, the website is called newvistas.com. You can see it here. And I have I can click on this link and it'll pull up the web page. And I'll just show you real quickly here. You scroll down to the bottom and there's a section on historical foundations, Joseph Smith city plot, early Latter-day Saint temples, and so on. You can click on this and it has just a ton of fascinating information about how the early temple designs were, how they, especially for the Kirtland Temple, as well as the Salt Lake Temple. Then it has a section in here on Joseph's city plot that we talked about, and a few articles and commentaries about it. I highly recommend this for anybody who wants to know more about how the Kirtland Temple was built, designed, and the revelation involved with it. It's just really cool.
Yeah,
so
that's fantastic.
Anyway,
a great resource.
I just wanted to show you that. Okay.
Yeah, so
Go ahead.
I was going to say that the Kirtland Temple overall, 15,000 square feet.
Yeah.
This is back in the day when the average house was probably maybe 500 square feet. You know.
Yeah, that's right.
Little cabin like houses. Well, some of the houses were maybe you know, upwards of 800 or 900 square feet, but there was few houses were over 1,000 square feet back then. So to have a 15,000 square foot edifice was a pretty major deal.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so now, and did you have anything more with section 95?
No, that's it for that.
Okay. Then section 96. This is talking about the. Well, you already kind of gave us an overview of that. This is in June of 1833. And it was during the conference of the high priest and so forth. But the couple of things I just wanted to mention there says that my servant Newell K. Whitney, this is verse 2, take charge of the place which is named among you, upon which I designed to build mine holy house. The name of that that was named among them was actually the French farm. That was the area that they had bought, and they were going to do this. That they had all these plots with the temple in the middle there, and then he talks about some of the different people who are going to be given those plots to build homes and work with and so forth.
Right.
And John Johnson was one of those people who are supposed to be involved with this this United Order kind of concept that they were exploring at the time. Also says that John Johnson is a descendant of Joseph and a partaker of the blessings of the promise made unto his father. So he's talking about Joseph of Egypt. He's a descendant of Joseph of Egypt, kind of like in the Book of Mormon, Lehi and his family were descendants of Joseph as well.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool.
All
right. Anything you have on that you wanted to talk about then, Jonathan, on 96?
Nothing on 96.
Okay. And so let's move to 97. This is
Okay.
the one that was a little bit out of order. This was actually received before the other ones, like you said. And so this is in Kirtland in August of 1833. Revelation deals basically with the Jackson County and being Zion and the persecutions that were going on there.
Mhm.
Do you want to go ahead and?
Well, I just like the very first verse. Again, where it
Yes.
talks about friends,
Mhm.
but it says, many of whom are truly humble and are seeking to learn wisdom and to find truth, right?
Yeah.
That's a key for all of us as well. You know, all these revelations are in here because even though they are given to the people involved, they're universal principles. And so the way to diligently seek to learn wisdom and find truth is to be humble. Once we're not humble, then we're no longer seeking for wisdom and truth because we think we already have it. And that's one of the things I really love about members of the church who are seeking truth and don't feel like they know everything, you know, that they are humble, they're open to truth wherever it comes from,
Exactly.
and they're continually seeking greater wisdom.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Learn wisdom and find truth. When we've talked in previous podcasts about the difference between knowledge and wisdom, the wisdom part of it is to understand the why and the how things happen.
Mhm.
Those are the two questions that bring you wisdom, and then to find truth is such a key concept, you know, because there's so much falsehood out there in the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting too on this. This is a little bit of a digression, but down here in verse 5,
Mhm.
this gets into some of my work on Jonathan Edwards. But you know, I've been doing all this work. I presented at your conference about Jonathan Edwards' influence on Joseph Smith.
Yeah.
And it's just an amazing thing. But this is another example right here in section 97. And I'll show you, it talks about the multiplicity of blessings.
Yeah.
And that's a term that only appears in the Doctrine and Covenants, and it appears 9 times in the Doctrine and Covenants. It doesn't appear in the Bible or in the Book of Mormon. So where does that come from? And one of the, it's a common word that Jonathan Edwards used to use. So I want to just kind of update you and the audience a little bit about the Jonathan Edwards stuff just for a minute. We can talk about it more another time, but
Sure.
it comes in right here. And as you know, we have this webpage, mobom.org, Museum of the Book of Mormon. So I've added a new section at the top under Jonathan Edwards that you can go to and learn more about all this for those interested. And here's what the page looks like. I just show the influence between and intertextuality between Jonathan Edwards and Joseph Smith. So you can go there on your own at your leisure. But I want to bring it up here because in section 97, verse 5, the Lord said, I will bless him with a multiplicity of blessings. As I point out here, that multiplicity is a non-biblical term, a non-Book of Mormon term that's in the Doctrine and Covenants several times. And it's a term that Jonathan Edwards used quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And then furthermore, there's when it talked about the grievous sin that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
That's another non-biblical term that appears 4 times in the Doctrine and Covenants. It's not in the Book of Mormon or in the Bible, but it's also from Jonathan Edwards. Jonathan Edwards talked about a grievous sin several times.
For those who may not have been, you know, finding more or know about that, maybe just a quick explanation as to, you know, who Jonathan Edwards is and why this is important.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't mean to digress that much on this, but those who have been going to Rod's conferences for a few years know. Here's another example. I'll skip over this one because it's kind of too complicated. But this is the book that I wrote about it. It's called Infinite Goodness. It talks all about Joseph Smith, Jonathan Edwards, and the non-biblical language in the Book of Mormon and the Doctrine and Covenants and so on. So I didn't mean to do a thread jack here on that, but it's fascinating to me whenever I read these sections of the Doctrine and Covenants, and I try to do intertextuality between the Doctrine and Covenants and the Bible.
Yeah.
Usually I find that if there's no intertextuality between the Bible or the Book of Mormon and the Doctrine and Covenants, it always comes back to Jonathan Edwards. And that's because when Joseph was young, he was familiar with the works of Jonathan Edwards. When he lived in Palmyra, they were widely available right there.
Mhm.
And you can see how the Lord prepared Joseph Smith to translate the Book of Mormon and to receive these revelations in the Doctrine and Covenants by having him be familiar with other Christian teachers. And then he was able to use their beautiful, wonderful, inspired terminology to explain the gospel in a new way. And it's just a fantastic new approach to understanding the scriptures. And I wanted to bring it up here because it was so evident in these passages in the Doctrine and Covenants, in these sections that we're going over. That's why I brought it up. I mean, I obviously I'm becoming a Jonathan Edwards fanatic. Well, not really. I mean, I'm doing lots of other things too. I'm doing my paintings and all my other stuff. But it's just such a profound new way to understand the scriptures, to realize that the Book of Mormon and the Doctrine and Covenants are part of Christian tradition, really. They're the fulfillment of Christian hopes and desires for all those centuries. And I compare it to the situation with the Jews. You know, when Christ came, the Jewish people had the same scriptures as Christ's followers did, but they didn't see him the same way, right?
Mhm.
He was trying to explain how he was the fulfillment of Isaiah's prophecies and so on. And most of the Jewish people just could not understand that because it was contrary to their traditions. A few of them did. And that's why Matthew, when he wrote his book, he tried to show the Jews how Christ was the fulfillment of the Old Testament prophecies. And it's a very similar situation with Jonathan Edwards and the Restoration. I think of Jonathan Edwards as kind of an Elias for the Restoration, preparing the minds of the people. He talked about the glory of the church in the latter days and about the America being a promised land for the restoration of the gospel, all these amazing things. But his contemporaries, as well as many Christians today, don't recognize what he was saying. But when you read it through the eyes of a young Joseph Smith, you can see that he was preparing Joseph Smith to understand what his future role would be in restoring the gospel.
But he was also a very, very influential guy, and so other people who had read his books would be able to relate to some of the wording and so forth that Joseph Smith ultimately used.
Excellent point.
In these revelations, and also even in the Book of Mormon, as he translated, did an actual translation, which again goes into the whole point about not, being a reading of the book out of a stone in a hat, but more of an actual translation that came from his own memory bank.
That's right. That's right. And it's really cool because now we can see in retrospect how Jonathan Edwards laid the groundwork for Joseph Smith, helped prepare him, so that when he was able to actually translate the plates, as you say, he said he translated them. Most of us, I think, watching this podcast, still believe what Joseph Smith said, right? And so now we can see how he was able to translate the Book of Mormon so beautifully, because he could draw upon these other faithful, devout Christian, theologians who had devoted their life to Christ. They just didn't have the restoration of the gospel yet, but they laid the foundation for it, and they made it possible, really. And if people now, looking back, reading Jonathan Edwards, can see what he was anticipating was really the restoration of the gospel that we have today.
Yeah, kind of like a John the Baptist kind of a person.
Yeah, exactly. And Elias, and he even talked about what the role of an Elias, the same way Joseph Smith did. So it's awesome. It's really exciting new stuff.
Well, so
anyway,
in section 97, it talks a little bit about this a school in Zion, and there should be a school in Zion. And now, so Zion had kind of an interesting, there was a Zion that was a physical location. And I noticed in the manual, it basically said that it kind of evolved from a physical location to kind of a more esoteric Zion, being basically just all the pure in heart. And I take just a tiny bit of issue with that because I think it's both.
Okay. Well, it is both. It's actually three things, because there's Mount Zion over in Jerusalem too.
Right. So there's Mount Zion. And the definitions of Zion are actually in there, but it's interesting because Joseph Smith talked about Zion. And in the previous podcast, we actually talked about how he said that all of America, North and South, is Zion. And people have said, well, that's all of North and South America, and it actually isn't. And actually, if you look at how his definition was of Zion, it was actually talking about really, America. But then there's this physical location of Zion. There's also this the pure in heart, which makes up Zion.
Right.
And then, like you said, there's also the Mount Zion over in Israel as well. And so Zion is there's several different potential definitions of that, but I just wanted to bring up the fact that Zion, in this particular case, during this time frame, people were being called to go to Zion, and they were going to Missouri. But then the Lord here in these revelations also said that Kirtland is one of the cities of Zion.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yet far west wasn't quite getting started yet, but people were moving out there to the Missouri area, and saying, this is Zion. So then the Lord also kind of gives us a little bit of an idea of how he, maybe one of the problems with building the temple, while they were being chastised for not building the temple, was because they didn't have money. And so the Lord puts out this verse 11. He says, yea, let it be built speedily by the tithing of my people.
Right.
So tithing was being instituted for the building of the temple, and people were to give this tithing of their funds basically to build the temple. So a lot of them were actually did their tithing based on a percentage of their time of labor.
Right.
How much time they actually could devote to the labor of building the temple.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where kind of tithing is one of the first times where tithing is brought into the picture for the building of temples.
That's right. Yeah. Well, and later on in that section when it says, I think it's in verse 21, isn't it, where it says, thus saith the Lord, let Zion rejoice, for this is Zion, the pure in heart. And so it started off with Mount Zion in Jerusalem, then there's Zion in Kirtland and in Missouri. And gradually the Lord revealed that Zion is wherever you live if you're pure in heart. And that's how it is in our day, right? Because effectively there's stakes of Zion all around the world. And you can live in Zion, you can live in a Zion society anywhere in the world. And that's kind of it's a new concept in terms of Christian teachings and so on, to have a Zion society everywhere in the world. But that's what we're establishing right now today. And that's why I love the way the Lord teaches line upon line, precept upon precept. And it wasn't until you get to that verse 21 where he says, yeah, Zion's a place, but Zion is where the pure in heart are.
I think it's more like an attitude.
It's an attitude, but it's a society.
Yeah.
It's a whole society of people that share that, a society of people who have pure heart, who are pure in heart,
right,
who have those same ideals, the shared ideals, and this shared standards, the shared desires to live the way the Lord has told us that we can live. It's like if we all allow the Lord to build us into palaces instead of these little shacks that we are most of the time, but build us into the palace that he wants us to be, then we can all live in a Zion society. And I, as you know, I have this blog, How to Zion, where I'm trying to talk about how to establish Zion. Mm-hmm. But it's because almost everyone in the world is seeking a perfect society. They're seeking a better society than the one they're living in, whether they live in Afghanistan or the United States. It doesn't matter. Everybody wants a better, more equitable, more just and free society where people can develop themselves to their maximum potential and live in harmony and love and peace. Everybody wants that. Nobody knows how to do it except the Lord has, in the restoration of the gospel, has told us how to do it. But what it makes me think is, we started off talking how the Lord chastised the people for not building the temple, right? Is he chastising us for not building Zion? That's the question we have to ask ourselves. What are we doing to establish Zion in our own lives?
Yeah, I think that's really is true. But actually, if you consider the definition of Zion being anywhere where the pure in heart are, I mean, then then technically, I guess we would be establishing some Zion. In verse 19 it says, "The nations of the earth shall honor her and shall say, surely Zion is the city of our God." And it's interesting because the nations of the earth actually have, to a large, to the vast majority of extent, have welcomed the church. Not always with open arms, but they have opened their arms either way. Allowed the church to come in and establish wards and branches and stakes and things. But I still think that there's ultimately going to be this Zion, a physical location as well.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, there'll be a center place. There's always a center place.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And there's stakes all around it. So
there's that. Verse 14, I just wanted to make a comment on that, that they may be perfected in the understanding of their ministry, in theories, in principles, and in doctrines, in all things pertaining to the kingdom of God on the earth, the keys of which kingdom have been conferred upon you. So I think it's interesting that he wants us to study these kinds of things, study the theory, study the principles, study the ministry, study the doctrines and so forth that pertain to this. So I think that Joseph Smith was to some extent prepared by Jonathan Edwards, even because he was studying if you want to call it, the theory of religion, which is Jonathan Edwards had a lot of concepts that he was expounding on to people back before Joseph Smith's time.
Yeah, and again, I don't want to do a thing on Jonathan Edwards. I'd love to, believe me, but his overriding message was devotion to God and to family. In fact, when he was dying, he talked about being married forever, for eternity, with his wife, and he talked about his children. He leaving. They were going to lose their earthly father, but he wanted them to look to their heavenly Father who would never fail them. So that was his overriding message. He talked about if we are faithful in Christ, when we live in heaven, we'll breathe love, we'll swim in an ocean of love. And those are some of the images that he used to describe how much our Heavenly Father loves us and how we will partake of that love when we're in the next life. And even in this life, we can experience that. So it's a lot of beautiful stuff that someday we need to talk about.
Yeah,
but here, even in here, the verses you read, he talked about building a temple, build a house unto me. Now we're building hundreds of houses. It's amazing to see the ongoing restoration and the fulfillment of all these prophecies in here. But as we're building these hundreds of temples, we are establishing Zion all around the world. It's really amazing to see, to be part of.
And speaking of that, and this kind of a little bit of final thing here. So verse 16 says, "Yea, and my presence," is the Lord speaking, "shall be there, for I will come into it, and all the pure in heart that shall come into it shall see God."
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what a beautiful promise that is. Those who, I mean, the Lord apparently needs or desires a temple so that he can have these experiences with people, and they can be in his presence and actually see him, is what they're kind of saying, is that all the pure in heart that come into it shall see God. So wow, that's an amazing promise.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think, did you have anything else that you wanted to share with everybody?
Well, just the last few verses in here where it talks about, it says in verse 24, the indignation of the Lord is kindled against all their abominations and their wicked works. Nevertheless, Zion shall escape if she shall observe to do all things which I have commanded her. And that applies to each of us individually as well. A lot of times there's critics of the church, or former members and so on, who never really caught the vision of what these revelations are all about. They didn't understand the importance of being patient and developing this love of God that lets you see God in everything. And it's such a beautiful way to see the world. And it's one of the things Jonathan Edwards talked about, to come back to that. But it really is a situation where you can experience this joy that is indescribable once you take Christ into your life and strive to become like him, the way we were taught all the time. And going to the temple and being part of the temple is part of that as well, of course.
Yeah.
So
Well,
anyway, these are powerful sections of the Doctrine and Covenants when we apply them to ourselves, as we talked earlier about imagining ourselves as being the Lord building us into a palace or a temple, which is far from where we are now. But all these challenges and the chastisement we undergo and so forth is to help us to become more like him, more perfect. So it's exciting times that we live.
It is absolutely. Thank you, Jonathan, for joining us and for sharing this fantastic insights. We sure appreciate that. And thank you, everybody, for taking the time to watch these podcasts. We hope that they are helpful and are enlightening and encouraging. So if you are liking these, give us a thumbs up and like us there. And then also if you subscribe to our channel and that kind of thing, that would be fantastic. Jonathan has several other websites as well that you want to go and explore that. And we will look forward to seeing you next week. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week. We're going to be talking.
Fun to be with you, Rod. I wish I was there in person. One of these days we'll do it again.
Yes, exactly. But you're there on the coast, keeping everything good over there.
Everything is awesome here.
Here in Utah, we've been getting a lot of the smoke from the fires going on in Northern California and Oregon, and good.
I know.
Every couple of days it just gets bad.
The only pollution we get is when it comes across the Pacific from China. So. And by then it's pretty small. I mean, we have essentially no smog here on the coast.
Yeah. Well, we've been choking on that. In fact, Salt Lake has had some of the worst air quality in the world over the last couple of weeks. Anyway, thanks everybody. We'll see you.
Okay.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.